2020 sees the 100th celebration of South Africa's premier staying race, the Gold Cup. It's the ultimate test of fitness and endurance, and the coveted trophy carries the names of many a champion.
Well, Gold Cup's a Gold Cup, isn't it? I mean, it's always an exciting race.
All across the years, it's always been the July, the Met, the Gold Cup and the Summer Cup.
They go round twice. And I mean, it's like those Gold Cups overseas. They're just exciting races.
It's like the fourth major, so to win that's as big a deal as winning the July.
The Gold Cup's the Gold Cup.
What does it take from a horse to win the Gold Cup?
A horse that stays all day, and a horse that's got stamina. A horse that's got a good nature, and a horse that does his training very well.
They've got to be a good thinker. They've got to enjoy their work, and they've got to know what's going to be asked of them.
It's very important to get a horse that suits the race.
You know, you don't want a hot horse going to the races on Gold Cup day and running his race before the race. So I think temperament, big heart, and have the ability.
The Gold Cup was a marathon event, and horses had to be really fit.
A horse has got to be strong, he's got to have stamina, all day stamina, you know.
I think you've got to have a class horse, you've got to have a good stayer with that touch of class, but most importantly you have to have a lion-hearted horse.
It takes a very special horse, you know, it's the end of the season so the horses are tiring as well. They've got to have a lot of stamina, and I think, you know, the staying pedigrees come to the fore in these kind of races. So obviously it's a very special race to win, and you've got to have your horse really at his peak to produce the goods.
The race was first run in 1920 for a stake of £2,000. It was contested over a distance of 2 miles or 3,200 metres, a distance which has not changed in the history of the race. The South African-bred Comely Lad won the inaugural running in 1920, but it then took another 24 years for a second locally bred horse to win. The reason being that in the early 1900s, large numbers of horses were imported into South Africa from Great Britain and New Zealand. And whilst South African breds have mainly won since 1944, 14 imports have done so as well. 5 from Great Britain, 2 from Ireland and the US, 4 from Argentina and 1 from Australia. Humidor was the first horse in the history of the race to score a double of wins in 1933 and 35. He was by Galloper Light, out of a mare by the Tetrarch. The Spotted Wonder, as he was famously known, was voted Britain's 2-year-old of his century. His daughter Mumtaz Mahal went on to become one of the most important broodmares of the 20th century.
There are 25,000 people at Greyville for the running of the Durban Gold Cup. It's a lovely day in many respects.
Despite the Second World War, racing continued throughout the 1940s, bringing hope and encouragement to people. In 1941, new kid on the block, Charlie Behrens, started his run of what was to culminate in 7 Gold Cup wins. Another jockey with a keen sense of pace was Arthur Saunders, who won aboard Couchet in 1946. His grandson, the Grade 1 winning trainer Eric Sands, recalls the past.
I just know that he was a great judge of pace. Mr. Prestige told me in Cape Town he was, over the longer distance, he was unbeatable. Great judge of pace. He was a natural lightweight. I don't know much about the race. I know he won it in 1946. He rode, he could ride, I think he rode in that race at about 46 kgs. He could ride at 42 kgs. He was a natural and a great long distance rider. Very small man, but they said he had massive hands and very strong hands.
In those days, mementos and trophies were given. You've got some beautiful pieces here. Just tell us a little bit about them.
To tell you the honest truth, I didn't know that I had them. My gran gave me a hat box full of all his old stuff when he retired, and when he was gone, when my gran was getting old, and some of them were a little bit illegal, like spurs in the boots and things like that. But Listen, they were his items and that, and amongst them was this trophy for the Gold Cup, and a stick that was had a gold head on it. Those were the Jockeys' prizes for winning the race. What I believe is that the Jockeys got a miniature of the original trophy, and this is the one that my grandfather got.
This stick is surely a collector's item.
Yeah, I've seen other sticks like it. They used to have a little label on here, not a label, engraved section in here. It's made from the old whalebone which sticks used to be made before. This is 9-carat gold here, and it's basically a piece to just exhibit in that. But this is the stick that was given to my grandfather at the time of winning the Gold Cup with the trophy. But it is good to have out again and feel it in your hands.
How unbelievably special.
Thank you.
To Greyville for the Durban Gold Cup Handicap.
Exeter Chimes became the first filly since the inaugural running some 32 years before to win the race. It was a decade of records, as 3 years later, in 1955, Skyfinch became the first 3-year-old to take the honours.
Heading for home, Moon Madness is slightly ahead of Skyfinch. Skyfinch is an outsider, but somebody backed him, and Skyfinch came home ahead of Juggernaut, Speybridge and Moon Madness, a 25-1 winner of the Durban Gold Cup.
In 1957, the 4-year-old colt Excise won and wrote his name into the history books by being the first horse to land the Gold Cup Durban July double. He went on to win Africa's greatest race the following year in 1958. In '64, Charlie Beren scored his 7th win in the race.
New Chief has enough extra speed to win by half a length. Charlie Berens thus celebrates his 7th success in the Gold Cup.
It was a record he held throughout his life and was only broken some 48 years later by a race-riding sensation, Felix Coetzee. The only dead heat in Gold Cup history took place in 1977 when Don the Stripe and Pacer could not be separated as they passed the post. Michael, you were on Don the Stripe. Tell us about that race.
Yes, Pacer was out in front. Don the Stripe came from quite a few lengths back. We just got up, but also it was tense because Brian Dees rode Pacer, for the Oppenheimers, and Miles was trained by Sonny Whitefoot, and nobody knew, who actually won, so that took a few minutes as well, and, nobody would go in the number 1 box. So, it was, quite a happy ending, let's put it that way.
And when the result was actually announced?
Huge roar from the crowds. Unbelievable, really, because, to think you go 2 miles and then end up in a dead heat, it's phenomenal. It's virtually unheard of.
1979 winner, the Basil Cooper trained the malster, was talented but also a rogue and inconsistent. Interestingly, he provided the legendary Lester Piggott with one of the most outstanding wins of his celebrated career. That race took place at Scottsville in November 1975. After having got left in the stalls with Piggott telling the starter his fortune, he finally set off. Despite having lost 12 lengths, Piggott managed to get up and win the race in class record time. In a book written by Sean McGee called The Race of My Life, Piggott nominated his win on the malster as his greatest ride ever. The malster won on his 3rd attempt in the Gold Cup. The story goes that his arrival on course was delayed due to a puncture on Basil's old float coming down from Moy River. The wheel nuts had been tightened too much, so that help had to be sought before being able to replace the wheel. The field were already at the start by the time he arrived at Greyville.
Basil Cooper, who was the trainer, and he was floating the horse, came rushing to me and said, come, hurry up, because the float had broken down. I had to trot the malster out, down to the start, and I wasn't there 3 minutes, and they said, the guys have got to go in.
Tell us what it was like as you turned for home.
The way I was going, I said, I think this horse can win this race. And as I asked him for more, he just took off. He lowered his body and off he went. Wow. And I tell you, I felt excited. And when I got to near the finish, I said, I'm going to win this. And I went on to win it. And it was such a great feeling. I'll tell you, Basil Cooper was over the moon. It's JBK Cooper with the eye patch. He had put such a lot into this horse. And he told me, he said, you're going to win this race, but you got to ride him right. And everything went according to plan.
The malster didn't like greys, I understand.
He hated them. If you saw them at the track, he'd physically go and attack them. He just hated the greys. And funny enough, the horse that ran second to him was a grey horse. And I remember him having his ears back and looking at him like that. So I thought, oh, I hope he doesn't attack him because they'll disqualify me then. But he went right through with it all the way. So that was it.
Freddie, what relationship did you have with Basil Cooper?
Oh, great relationship. I admired the man. He was a good trainer. There was a lot of respect, and he respected me too, which is very important in jockey-trainer relationship.
Where did Basil Cooper train from?
He trained in Moy River. He wasn't at the track, so I didn't see him at the track or anything like that. He just kept me informed every day on how the horse was doing. And I thought he was one of the best trainers I've ever ridden for.
The only lady to have trained a Gold Cup winner is Anne Upton. Furious won for her in 1980. Anne, you were only the second woman to hold a trainer's license in South Africa. That was in 1957. Were you ever concerned about competing in a male-dominated world?
It didn't worry me that there were men trainers. You could only do the best you could. And if you made the grade, you made the grade. If you didn't, toughies, get on with something else. I trained a lot of Gymkhana racehorses, won a few, and I thought, well, I'd better go for the big one, Scottsville.
You have a wonderful gift of dealing with difficult horses and developed a reputation as someone who could literally fix them, not the least of which was Furious. How did that all come about?
I met Fred Rickaby on the race course, and we struck up a very solid friendship. We did quite a lot of work together with horses of his, and then of course he said, I'm going to send you a very difficult horse. That's how he spoke. So I said, send him, Fred, I'll do the best I can. And that was Furious. Furious came to my yard and he got out of the horse box and he quickly had a look at about 3 Friesland cows that walked past him. And he thought, what the hell are those? I haven't seen them for a long time. Well, he settled down very quickly. He had lovely length of rein. He had a wonderful temperament. He was quiet. He didn't fight you. He got on with whatever you asked him to do. And he managed to climb up the hills and down the dales where I lived, in the edge of World's View and the plantations. He loved living in the country.
Tell us about his win in the Gold Cup.
We'd won a number of races before when Cyril Herberts was in London. And he phoned and he said, look, can you win the Gold Cup? So I said, we've got a good chance. He said, I want to know, can you win? So I said, yes, Mr. Herberts, all right if you say so. He was a very difficult man on the quiet, but I knew I had a good horse and I knew I had a good jockey. Bertie timed the race. He won it very easily, never used the stick. It was hands and heels ride. And Herberts pitched up at Greyville at 1:30. Now I said, I thought you were in London. He said, well, I had to come here to lead my horsing.
No pressure, Anne.
No pressure. When a man is going to have a bet on a horse like his owner, you know, the man would spend, I'm not exaggerating, a bet like 5,000 rand on a horse for a win, or 10 or 15 for a win on a horse, gives the trainer a hell of a lot of worry. And I'd seen Sydney Laird have problems like this.
Yeah. What did Furious mean to you, Anne?
He was always so pleased to see me come out of the crowd. He knew, oh, where's Mum? There's Mum. And same with loading into the float to go home. He'd go into the box and he'd try and look round to see where you were, if you were coming too.
Was his work rider Jean Newell important in Furious's success?
Yes, she used to work him. He was very fond of Jean, and Jean was an excellent horsewoman. She really was a girl who could ride almost any horse. She wasn't scared. He loved her, and she rode a lot of work on Furious. He knew her very well, and he was sent to Johannesburg when he retired as the lead horse to Turffontein. And he lived his days out at Turffontein. He's buried there as a grave. I couldn't have existed without horses in my life. So I was very fortunate that I took up training.
The 1980s heralded in the golden years with the mighty Terence Millard and Felix Coetzee. Together they dominated the Gold Cup, starting a run of 6 wins for Terence and 8 for Felix. To racing fans, Terence Millard is best remembered as one of South Africa's most dominant racetrack forces.
Yeah, Terence had an unbelievable record in the Gold Cup, and if you knew the man though and you knew the way he worked, it really wasn't that surprising or difficult to understand. Good horses, good jockeys. You had Felix Coetzee and Mark Sutherland riding for him mainly, and a great stickler for detail. He knew his horses inside out. They were supremely fit and blood tested a lot, so he knew exactly where he was. He was very, very difficult to beat over ground, in fact in any race, but the Gold Cup I think gave him a lot of pleasure because it was probably those years anyway, it was a supreme test of excellence.
The team that Mr. Millard built around him with his jockeys and work riders towards the end was really strong, and we had the utmost respect for him. He wanted things done just his way, and we gave it to him. We rode the horses in the track work and the preparations just to the letter. He was very serious about the way he wanted his work done, and we did it, and I think that contributed in quite a big way to the success.
Castle Walk possibly was his favourite winner. He got eliminated from the July, and Terence was moaning about it for a month and said, I'm going to make a meal of the Gold Cup. Sure enough he did, and the horse won well. So of course he was a great influence, I think, on a lot of us, certainly on me. And when he retired, he took an active interest in the stable, and all we really wanted to do was make him proud. And when things did go right and you got praise from the guy, you were very proud yourself. He had one serious shortcoming though, that was his driving. All he would do is talk about Olympic Duel or Illustrador or something, never looking at the road in front of him, and he was scary to drive with. But as a trainer and a master trainer and really a legend in the Gold Cup, hard to emulate what he's done.
5 of Felix's record 8 wins came aboard Millard horses. Whilst Millard recorded a phenomenal 4 wins in a row, Felix was not far behind with a hat-trick from 1984 to 1986.
Debonair, Voodoo Charm and a colt. She was a big, powerful mare with a relentless action and stamina that just kept unfolding. And you could really be bold on her. And I think that's possibly the boldest I've ever been on a horse, because she would just run the field into the ground. And she showed that every time. Voodoo Charm, he had acceleration, so we got him very, very fit for the race. Sat off a couple of horses, and he quickened up the straight, and that was the end of it. A colt was an interesting one, because that was one of my best Gold Cups. I can't forget that, because he was travelling nicely and relaxed for half of the race. And when he got to the 1600, he just picked up the bit and started towing me. And I just thought, how good is this? And turned into the straight and thought, well, how far? And he won it really comfortably.
In 1990, the good-looking Argentinian-bred Illustrador set the tracks alight. In the space of one season, he won from 1,200 to 3,200 meters, including the Gold Cup. It was a great achievement, and not surprisingly, he was trained by the maestro himself, Terence Millard.
What Illustrador pulled off that year was just something crazy.
Welcome please, Jeff Lloyd.
International jockey Jeff Lloyd, who not only holds the record for riding 3 Group 1 winners on one day and 7 winners in a meeting on no less than 4 occasions, won the Gold Cup twice. His first win came aboard Spacewalk in 1993.
He was a very relaxed type of horse, really good temperament, the ideal horse you want to ride in a 2-mile race. He thought Ricky did a great job with him. Great training feat to get a horse that probably didn't have the ability that Ricky got out of him. I must say in those days it was probably the hardest race to win because of the dominance of Terence Millard. He was, unless you rode for him, which Felix and Mark were fortunate enough to be able to get on those machines that were near enough impossible to beat. So yeah, when you grabbed one, you took it with both hands. They weren't easy to come by.
Freddie, now you also won the Gold Cup on Scantizo. You tell me that was a really special win for you. Tell me about it.
Scantizo, Richard Aldous trained it, and I asked him to nominate the horse in the race, and he said, "Okay, he'll do it." And if it rained, I thought there's nothing that can beat this horse, because he loved the wet. And it poured down with rain the day before, and I went and ran the course in the morning. I ran around the course and I said, "This is our race."
Did he win going away?
Easy. It was like 3 or 4 lengths. And he just made them look silly. And I thought I was quite a good judge of pace. And I used to count them. I went to America and I learned to count seconds to a furlong. And I used to judge pace on counting all the time. If the horse is good enough, he will do it. But you got to time it right. You got to be able to know if you're going too fast or you're going too slow. And what you got at the finish, what that horse has got at the finish. You can go and ask a lot of people. They'll say, judge of pace. No, Freddie McCaskill was one of the best. I used to win a lot of races from the front. A lot. Because I could count how fast I was going. And what was left in that horse.
My best Gold Cup was probably Bella Bianca, when Tony trained her, because of the preparation that went into it. It was Mr. Millard's classic preparation, as normal, but the way, Tony put in Chaplin as the pacemaker. Mr. Millard had always used pacemakers, and Tony was doing the same thing, and Bernard was riding the Chaplin, the pacemaker. So our discussions and figuring out the pace, how far I wanted him to take me, what I was going to say when I wanted him to pull off. I didn't want there to be any mistakes, and Bernard was an absolute superstar. He did everything to the letter, and it was a close finish at the end. And I think, if you saw the confusion with the other horses when that move came at about the 700, well, I think I saw could have gone 3 different ways at the finish. So that was a really memorable one.
Highland Knight from St. Philippi.
Only 5 horses have won the Gold Cup twice, with Highland Knight being the most recent in 2002 and 3.
He erupting into action. Highland Knight.
Dennis, he was also the first horse in 35 years to achieve the double.
Highland Knight repeats the double.
He must have been some kind of horse to have done that.
Oh, hell, he was a hell of a horse. He started off in Johannesburg with the late Buddy Maroon. And then after he won the first Gold Cup with Buddy, he came down to me because I had a couple of horses of Andre MacDonald's. And listen, it wasn't a joyride because, as Buddy said, when he sent him to me, Dennis, he's got plenty troubles, niggles, troubles. And by the grace of God, we got him to the Gold Cup, and Robbie Hill at his best. We were able to pull it off, 2 in a row.
Highland Knight used to pull in a race. Well, I'd never ridden him before in a race. And I got him to switch off beautifully. So he had the box seat, basically. He had the run of the race.
Homeward bound.
Turned for home and just won a great race.
Highland Knight's running on courageously along the inside, but Highland Knight's going to go better. Highland Knight repeats the double. The Cannon Gold Cup. And Highland Knight and Northern Dignity bump their gates open.
Michelle, he was a big, strong bugger, and it was all heart. It was all heart. And he had a hell of a finishing speed, no matter what distance I ran him over. Even his prep runs going into the Gold Cup, he'd be outpaced, but that finishing speed, that was his forte. You must also remember he was out of a hell of a mare. I mean, that 1,000 Knights and 1,000 Stars, that whole family, they just produced good horses after good horses after good horses. So, and Badgerland in those days was quite a above average staying sire.
My next Gold Cup win was in 2006. I was getting on in my career. I would have been 45 years old at the time. And at the time, little was I to know I'd go on to ride until I was 58. But at the time I was thinking I was getting close to the end of my career. He was a great turn of foot for a stayer, and he had a lot of spark about him for a stayer. He wasn't a very dour horse. He was a horse that, he had the speed to probably win over shorter distances. So it was important to get him to switch off quickly in his races. And
it's close, but Diamond Quest has won the Cannon Gold Cup.
I remember my children would have been very young at that age, but they were at races, and it was the first time they had been to a race where their dad had received a trophy and probably got the first bite of it. So yeah, it was a very memorable win.
Only 2 winning jockeys have gone on to train a winner of the Gold Cup. Jockey Crockhoft won aboard Aristocrat in 1934 before training Salmon to victory in 1945. The only other person to have achieved this is Basil Marcus.
I've won the Gold Cup twice. The first time on American-bred horse called Hedge, owned by American owner Dr. John Chandler for Tony Finesse. I was only 19 at the time, and so that was 44 years ago. And I still remember the race like it was yesterday. I then won the Gold Cup for the second time on Equilateral, and beat Hawkins by a very, very tiny short head. I then won the Gold Cup for the third time as a trainer with Desert Lynx, and Desert Lynx was a terrific horse. He won with top weight, and Greg Sheen rode him, and it was just an unbelievable feeling to win the race as a jockey and a trainer.
Holding on and is going to win it. Desert Lynx has won it. Second place, Membrada, Omar Beach, Magical Ballad and Sarah Carrera.
With 8 Gold Cup winners to his name, Felix Coetzee, or the Cat as he was known, is the most successful rider in the history of the race. His victory spanned a 28-year period, with his last ride in the Gold Cup being a winning one on In Writing in 2012. Charlie Behrens runs a close second with 7 wins from 1941 to 1964. And in recent years, the popular Glen Hatt won 4 times between 95 and 2014.
For a funny Gold Cup story, one year I'd been riding in Hong Kong and Stephen Gell phoned me up and offered me a ride from Mike de Kock. He was working for Mike at the time. And I was on 7 Gold Cup winners at that stage, so I was equaling Charlie Behrens' record. And I would have liked to beat it. But Douglas White and I had planned a trip to Monty Roberts' farm that year. And it clashed with the Gold Cup. And I had to forego the ride. Well, of course it won. So we were in California, and I got the news when I woke up the one morning, and I went down to breakfast and joined Douglas, and I had the mutters. And he asked me what the hell was wrong with me. And I told him the sorry story. So I was very happy when years later Dean Caname gave me in writing, and I could break the record and make it my own.
What skill does it take from a jockey to win a race like that?
You've got to have a jockey that can probably think for more than 2 minutes. It's not always easy. I mean, a lot of us a bit scatterbrained, me being one of them. But it is a race where you've got to concentrate for a long period of time. It's a race where things can change very quickly. These long races are very tactical and very, you feel. I always had great satisfaction winning races, over the 2 mile distance,
When you're riding that type of race, I've ridden a couple of horses that were unlucky in the Gold Cup as well, but they found a lot of interference. So your big thing is to make sure you get a clear run.
Listen, tactics are important in every race, but it's the pace that's the big thing. Judging the pace and knowing what type of animal you've got underneath you. Horses that are one pace and can gallop along for a long way out, and others that need to finish it off.
You got to judge your pace. That's probably the most important race. When you ride, over those marathon distances. Understanding your pace, understanding your how fast you're going, how much is in reserve in the horse, how much you got at the finish, because you got to plan it and pace it perfectly if you want to win the Gold Cup.
It was one of my favourite races to ride, funny enough. Loved riding the Gold Cup.
Why?
I just did it. It was the marathon. It's a marathon of all the races in the country.
It's one of the most tactical races in South Africa, and it's a great race to ride in. Very exciting how you plan it and work it out, and your tactics, and I think this year is going to be an equally exciting day.
Towards the inside, Ash Cloud tries to come forward. Gothic's running on Magic.
There's nothing as heartwarming as a happy horse and owner. When that horse won the Gold Cup before surviving a bush racing ordeal, and his owner is the jockey who rode him to victory, it becomes a feel-good story.
The waving flag retired to Jenny Millington's rehoming centre, where he had been there a couple of months, and unfortunately on that fateful day he was stolen. 2 days later they found him, and he was in a very poor state, but Brett Crawford and his whole team and a whole lot of other people that were involved in his recovery managed to get him back on his feet again, and nobody really wanted him, which was so sad. And so that's how I ended up, and my daughter's been riding him, and they've really got on well with him, and he's now at a riding school in Johannesburg-Vlakte, where he gets ridden on a regular basis, and he's doing exceptionally well.
The passion for horse racing and the Gold Cup runs in families and down the generations. What does it mean to you as a young trainer to have such a wealth of history behind you?
Well, it's always very special. It's a very prestigious race, and we've been very fortunate. My dad won it twice as a jockey, both before I was born, and he won it with Desert Lynx as a trainer as well. So we've been lucky in the race. I don't know how many times Anton's won it, but he's won most of the big ones on numerous occasions. But it's a very prestigious race, and I think it's one of those races that any trainer these days would love to win.
The Gold Cup is a very sentimental race for my whole family. My grandfather, Terence Millard, won it 6 times. My dad, although I would say he's a very good conditioner of stayers, he's never won it. So this year we're really striving. We've got a horse from Cape Town, we've got a horse from Joburg. In fact, it's the only feature race in South Africa my dad has never won. He's run second, I think, 6 or 7 times. So yeah, we're striving to win it. It's a special one for us, and I really hope we can achieve that in the near future.
60% of winners have been 4- and 5-year-olds, but it's been as high as 70% in the last 20 years. Older horses have won the race, with a 9- and 10-year-old having even taken the honours. But it takes an exceptional 3-year-old, and understandably, only 4 have accomplished this feat in the race's proud history. They have all been colts: Skyfinch in 1955, Humdinger in 72, Castle Walk in 88, and Ancestral 4 in 2010. Only 5 horses have ever won the Gold Cup twice: Humidor in 1933 and 35, What Next in 1940 and 41, Shea Monty in 1949 and 50, and Cufflink in 1965 and 67. It then took another 25 years for a horse courageous enough to achieve this feat. It was trainer Dennis Dreyer's Highland Knight in 2002 and 3.
Highland Knight repeats the double.
Only 6 outstanding fillies and mares have won this marathon, which is known to suffer no fools when it comes to fitness and stamina. It took 32 years for the first mare, Exeter Chimes, to do so in 1952. A further 32 years later again saw Devon Air win in 1984, Festive Forever in 96, Bella Bianca in 98, Colonial Girl in 2000, and Dynasty's Blossom last year in 2019. The July Gold Cup double was achieved by Excise in 1957, Devon Air in 1984, Occult in 86, Illustrador in 90, and Spacewalk in 1993. However, only 3 of them accomplished the double of wins in the same year, those 3 being from the stable of the mighty Terence Millard, Debonair, Occult, and Illustrador. Since 1945, the greatest winning margin has been 4.5 lengths, achieved by Debonair, who triumphed under Felix Coetzee. The fastest run race was recorded by Humidor in 1933 when he clocked a blistering 192.96. The slowest run race was in 1963 when Jerez won in a time of 2:11.40, some 18 seconds slower. The most weight carried to victory was 59.5 kgs by It's My Turn in 2018. And the lowest, a mere 41, carried by Tower Bridge in 1921, Royal Rufus in 24, and Aristocrat 10 years later in 1934. No other trainer has made such an impact on the Gold Cup than Maestro Terence Millard. His 6 wins included 4 in a row, with Hawkins in 1983, Debonair in 84, Voodoo Charm in 85, and Occult in 86. Castle Walk won in 88, with the Illustrador completing Millard's dominance of the race in 1990. Since 2000, Mike de Kock has recorded 4 wins, with Thundering Star, Ancestral 4, Wild One, and Enard in 2016. And so, we celebrate 100 years of Africa's premier staying race. It's the ultimate test of stamina and fitness. This is why we race, and this is what we race for: the Gold Cup.